The stench of antiseptic and sterilized fear is a perfume I've worn for a decade. As an ER doctor, I was fluent in the language of tragedy, spoken in the staccato beeps of heart monitors and the hushed whispers of families. I thought I was immune to it, that my professional armor was unbreakable. But the universe has a cruel sense of humor. It loves to teach you just how vulnerable you really are. I was on a night shift when my husband, my brother, and my son were brought into my ER, unconscious. My first instinct was a primal surge. A wife's and mother's need to run to them to be the doctor they needed to fix this. But my colleague, Dr. Ben Evans, physically blocked me. His hand on my arm, his grip was surprisingly firm. "Eris, you can't go in there," he said. His eyes, usually so warm, were wide with something I couldn't place. It wasn't just pity. It looked like terror. This wasn't about hospital protocol. It was a warning. To really get the horror of that night, you have to understand the quiet perfection of the morning before. Just 12 hours earlier, everything was normal, bathed in the warm, boring light of a Tuesday. Our kitchen was its usual chaotic symphony. My husband, Liam, a titan in a tailored suit, was trying to spread cream cheese on a bagel without getting any on his silk tie. He was my rock, the calm, logical architect of our lives, the perfect balance to my high-strung, caffeinated energy. He was playfully arguing with his brother, Gavin, about the best bait for their upcoming fishing trip. Gavin was Liam's shadow, but like a funhouse mirror version. Where Liam was structure, Gavin was impulse and charm. He was the fun uncle, the one who'd slip our 15-year-old son, Leo, a 20 and tell him not to tell his mom. He was sprawled in a kitchen chair, laughing as he dodged a piece of bagel Liam flicked at him. And then there was Leo, my son, the son my entire universe orbited. He was leaning against the fridge, face buried in his phone, but a proud, goofy smile he couldn't hide kept breaking through. He'd just gotten his calculus score back, a 98. He'd been struggling, and he'd worked so hard, staying up late with Liam at the dining room table as they wrestled with derivatives. "I told you you'd decrush it," Liam had said, ruffling Leo's hair. "That's my boy." "It was all you, Dad," Leo mumbled, embarrassed but glowing. I watched them from the doorway, my travel mug warming my hands. This was it. This was everything. The easy love, the laughter, the quiet pride. The life I had so carefully built and fiercely protected. I was Dr. Eris Thorne, who could stitch a wound, restart a heart, and make life-or-death decisions without flinching. But in that kitchen, I was just a wife and a mother. Completely, foolishly happy. I remember thinking as I kissed them all goodbye that I was the luckiest woman alive. I had no idea that luck is a finite resource, and I'd just used up my lifetime supply. The first few hours of my shift were a familiar blur. A broken arm, a suspected appendicitis, a tourist with a nasty shellfish allergy. I moved through the chaos with practiced calm. The hospital was my domain, a place of controlled crisis where I was in charge. At 10:47 p.m., that control shattered. The call came over the intercom, clinical and cold, stripping all the love from their names. Dr. Thorne to Trauma Bay 3. Dr. Thorne to Trauma Bay 3. That wasn't unusual. What was unusual was the look on the charge nurse's face. Brenda was a woman who'd seen everything and was fazed by nothing. But her face was pale, her eyes filled with a deep, sorrowful pity that made the hair on my arms stand up. "Eris," she started, her voice a whisper. "The incoming ambulance, it's a single-car MVC. The patients, they're Liam, Gavin, and Leo Thorne." The world tilted, my ears filled with a roaring sound, my breath caught in my throat. For a second, I couldn't move. The names didn't make sense, they were just words. They couldn't be my Liam, my Gavin, my Leo. But then the ambulance bay doors burst open and I saw them. 3 stretchers, 3 still, silent bodies, and my world didn't just tilt, it imploded. That's when I ran, and that's when Ben stepped in my way. "You can't treat them, Eris. You know the rules," Ben said, his voice low and urgent, his body a wall between me and my family. "The hell I can't," I snarled, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. "That's my husband and my son in there, Ben. Get out of my way." "No," his grip tightened. He leaned in, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that chilled me to the bone. "Listen to me. You can't be on this case. You need to be off the floor. Officially. Understand? Don't look at the chart. Don't talk to the cops. Go home, just go home." His panic was contagious. It seeped into my shock and twisted it into something new, suspicion. This was more than a friend trying to shield me from trauma. This was a man trying to protect me from a threat. I looked past him into the trauma bay. The team was working on them, a flurry of blue scrubs and focused intensity. But something was wrong. There was no blood. Their clothes weren't torn. For a car wreck bad enough to knock 3 people out, there was a shocking lack of visible injury. I let Ben lead me away, my legs on autopilot. He took me to the doctor's lounge and pressed a bottle of water into my trembling hands. The official story trickled down through sympathetic murmurs. Liam's car had veered off a quiet road and rolled into a ditch. No other cars involved. First responders found them unresponsive, still buckled in. No obvious trauma, no smell of alcohol. The working theory was carbon monoxide poisoning from a faulty exhaust, but that didn't feel right either. They were moved to the ICU, 3 beds in a row, a silent, heartbreaking picture of my life. Liam, my strong, invincible husband, looked small. Gavin, always buzzing with energy, was terrifyingly still. And Leo, seeing my beautiful boy, his face so young, hooked up to a ventilator, it was a physical blow. A part of me broke right there. I followed Ben's warning for a few hours. I went home to our huge, empty house where the silence was screaming. The remnants of our morning were everywhere. Liam's coffee cup, Leo's textbook, a museum of a life that might already be over. I couldn't stand it. The investigator in me clawed its way through the grief. Ben told me not to look, which was the best way to make sure that I would. That night, I slipped back into the hospital, not as a doctor, but as a ghost. I used a back entrance and went to the records department, my heart hammering. I pulled their charts. The report was sparse. Single vehicle MVC, cause unknown. Initial toxicology screens were clean. But then I saw it. An addendum entered by Ben himself. He had ordered a more advanced panel, a mass spectrometry analysis. And next to it, a handwritten note, barely legible. Query Z117 compound. I'd never heard of Z117. A quick search on my phone yielded nothing. It was a ghost, but Ben knew it. He knew to look for it. He'd given me my first thread. The next step was Liam's study. I tore it apart. He was a financial consultant, his work a world of numbers I'd never bothered with. But Ben's other cryptic warning from a text he'd sent earlier echoed in my head. Check the contingency fund. I'm sorry, Eris. I found it on his laptop in a password-protected spreadsheet. It took me 3 hours to guess the password. Leo's birthday backwards. Inside wasn't a contingency fund, it was a payout schedule. Massive 6-figure payments made every quarter to a single entity, Viridian Dynamics. And there was another name in the notes, Gavin Thorne. My brother-in-law wasn't just a passenger, he was a partner. Viridian Dynamics. The name was vaguely familiar, a corporate giant with its fingers in everything from private security to agricultural science. As I dug deeper, a darker picture started to form. Using my medical credentials, I chased the ghost of Z117 through research databases. It was a dead end until I searched for Viridian's classified projects. And there it was, Project Nightingale. Project Nightingale was a Black Ops contract to develop a non-lethal incapacitating agent. A chemical that could be aerosolized, was odorless, colorless, and fast-acting. It caused a state that looked just like a deep coma but was untraceable by standard toxicology. The project had been shut down 5 years ago. The reason was buried in a heavily redacted report. Severe, unpredictable neurological side effects. Test subjects suffered everything from vegetative states to fatal brain hemorrhages. The compound's internal name was Z117. My family wasn't in a coma from a car crash. They had been deliberately poisoned. The pieces clicked into place, forming a picture of betrayal so big it was hard to process. Liam, my honorable husband, and his charming brother were mixed up with a weaponized chemical agent. The contingency fund wasn't for a rainy day, it was blood money. They must have stolen the formula and were selling it. The accident wasn't an accident. It was a deal gone wrong, a demonstration, a warning, or worse, a cleanup. My grief, once a suffocating blanket, began to burn. It morphed into a cold, diamond-hard rage. Who were they selling to? And who did this to them? To my son? Leo being in that car was the part that ripped me apart. Liam would never have knowingly put our son in danger. He must have been leverage. Or maybe I didn't know my husband at all. The walls started to close in. I felt constantly watched. One day, I came home to find my front door unlocked. Nothing was gone, but Liam's study had been disturbed, papers out of order, a drawer left ajar. It was a message. They knew I was looking. A few days later, a random IT audit flagged my late-night access to hospital records. My badge access was suspended. I was being gently, professionally cut off. Ben avoided me in the hallway. He was terrified. He'd given me all the help he dared. I was on my own. I had to go underground. I bought a burner phone and a cheap laptop with cash. I started learning about encryption and the dark web. The ER taught me how to find the body's secrets. Now I was learning to find the secrets of a hidden world. The breakthrough came from Gavin's social media. He was vain and couldn't resist posting photos from his extravagant trips. I cross-referenced the dates of his trips with the payout schedule. Every payment matched a trip Gavin took: a ski resort in the Alps, a yacht in Monaco, a business conference in Dubai. I started digging into the other attendees of that Dubai conference, and I found him, Marcus Thorne, a senior executive at Viridian Dynamics. His bio said he was an orphan with no living relatives. A lie. He was their cousin, a fact they had hidden their entire lives. The conspiracy wasn't just corporate, it was family. A secret cousin, a powerful executive at the company that developed the poison. Liam and Gavin weren't just thieves, they were insiders. It was a family business of terror, and they had brought the consequences of their greed crashing down on my son's head. The breaking point came on a Thursday. I was sitting by Leo's bed when Dr. Albright, the head of neurology, came in. "Eris," he began gently, "Leo's EEG readings are showing a significant decline in cortical activity. We need to start talking about the possibility that the damage might be irreversible." Irreversible damage. They were talking about my brilliant, vibrant boy as if he were a broken machine. Everything inside me went quiet. The grief, fear, and confusion all burned away, leaving nothing but an Arctic calm. The doctor in me was gone. The wife was gone. In their place was something new, something forged in betrayal and loss, something cold, sharp, and unbreakable. Justice was a fantasy. The police saw a car accident. The hospital saw a medical mystery. Viridian was protected by layers of money and power. There was no one to turn to. If justice was going to be done, I would have to do it myself. My revenge wouldn't be violent. Violence is messy. I'm a doctor, a strategist. I understand systems, biological, financial. And I know the best way to destroy a system is to turn it against itself. My revenge would be a diagnosis, a prognosis, and a treatment. Clinical, precise, and absolute. I went home and created a new kind of patient chart. For Gavin, for Marcus, and for Liam. I studied them not as a physician, but as an assassin of lives, identifying their weaknesses, their passions, their pressure points. My rage became my focus. My grief became my fuel. I spent my days at the hospital with Leo, talking to him, willing him to come back. I spent my nights at war. Target 1, Gavin Thorne. His weakness, ego and greed. He was the weak link. Using my burner phone and a voice modulator, I sent an anonymous tip to a rival criminal syndicate I'd found on the dark web, one with a violent history with Viridian. The tip was simple. Gavin Thorne was going into business for himself with a new, more potent version of Z117. I included doctored financial records showing payments into a secret account in his name only. I planted the seeds of betrayal and let them grow. I made him a target for people far more dangerous than me. Target 2, Marcus Thorne, the architect. His weakness, his reputation. He built a fortress of corporate respectability around his dark deeds. I would tear it down. I'd uncovered whispers of a past scandal, a cover-up of fatally flawed clinical trial data for a heart medication. People had died, and Marcus had buried the evidence. I spent weeks gathering proof, contacting a disgruntled former scientist, and packaged it all up. The data, memos with Marcus's signature, the scientist's testimony. I sent it to a tenacious investigative journalist known for taking down corporate giants, and I made it look like the leak came from his own inner circle. His fortress would crumble from the inside. Target 3, Liam Thorne, my husband, the ultimate betrayal. His weakness wasn't greed or pride, it was his twisted love for me and Leo. He thought he could play with fire and we wouldn't get burned. He was wrong. I spent my days by his bed and my nights breaking into his offshore accounts. And then I saw the truth. He wasn't just a participant, he was the mastermind. The plan was his. Gavin and Marcus were his tools. He had put Leo in that car on purpose, not as leverage, as cover. Who would suspect a man when his own son was a victim? It was the perfect alibi. That revelation was the final death of the woman I used to be. Love curdled into something I didn't recognize. And then, one afternoon, as I was adjusting his pillow, his eyelids fluttered. Liam was waking up, and I was ready. Gavin was the first to fall. His frantic calls to Liam's phone went unanswered. His partners now saw him as a liability. I don't need the details. One day, he was simply gone. His flashy car was found at the airport, his apartment empty. A missing persons case that would gather dust. He had vanished into the violent world he was so eager to join, consumed by the wolves I set on him. Marcus Thorne's ruin was public, a slow-motion car crash on the global stage. The journalist's exposé landed like a bomb. "Viridian's vein of deceit," the headline screamed. The stock plummeted. The SEC launched an investigation. The families of the heart medications victims filed a class action lawsuit. Marcus was forced to resign in disgrace, his name destroyed, his fortune annihilated. He would spend the rest of his life fighting lawsuits and staring at the face of a ruined man. Then it was time for Liam. He woke up to a world he no longer controlled. I was sitting in the chair by his bed, not with tears of relief, but with an expression of pure ice. "Eris," he rasped, his voice hoarse. "Leo, is he?" "Leo is fighting," I said, my voice flat. "No thanks to his father." I watched the confusion in his eyes turn to fear as I calmly, methodically laid it all out. I told him about Z-117, about Viridian, about his cousin Marcus. I showed him the printouts of the offshore accounts. I told him Gavin had disappeared. I told him Marcus's career was a smoldering ruin. I presented the evidence of his betrayal not as an accusation, but as a diagnosis. He stared at me, speechless. He started to stammer, to deny, but I held up a hand. "The best part, Liam," I said, leaning forward, my voice a venomous whisper. "The most perfect part of my revenge is what happens now. See, while you were sleeping, I used the power of attorney you so thoughtfully gave me. That money you stashed away. Every last cent has been anonymously donated to a charity for the victims of corporate crime. Fitting, don't you think?" A choked sound escaped his lips, but I wasn't done. "And the official story is a masterpiece. I've spoken to the authorities. I've given them carefully selected evidence. The story is that you, Liam Thorne, are a heroic whistleblower. You discovered what your criminal brother and cousin were doing and tried to stop them. They targeted you, and tragically, our son was caught in the crossfire. You will be hailed as a hero, Liam. You'll have to live with that praise, knowing the truth. You'll live every day with people thinking you're a saint, while you suffocate on the knowledge that you are the monster who almost killed his own child for money. You have no fortune, no brother, and no family that will ever claim you. You have only your lies and your guilt. It's a prison with no bars, and you will be its solitary inmate for the rest of your miserable life." I stood up. I looked down at the broken man in the bed, the stranger wearing my husband's face. There was no triumph in my heart, only a vast, aching emptiness. The revenge was complete, and it was as hollow as I felt. I walked out of that hospital room and never looked back. I filed for divorce the next day. I left him with nothing but his public reputation and his private hell. The months that followed were a blur. My entire world narrowed to a single purpose, Leo. He began to emerge from the fog slowly, miraculously. A flicker of his eyelids, a squeeze of my hand. The day he spoke my name, his voice weak and raspy, was the day the sun rose again in my world. His recovery was a grueling marathon of therapy. He wasn't the same boy. The carefree light in his eyes was gone, replaced by a somber, knowing gaze. He has a limp now, and his short-term memory is a battlefield. But he's alive. He's here. We have each other. I couldn't stay in that city. Every corner held a ghost. I resigned, sold the house, and cut every tie to our old life. We moved to a small, quiet coastal town where no one knows our story. I opened a small family practice, a place where I treat scraped knees and the flu, a world away from the ER. Our new life is quiet, defined by the rhythm of the tides and the sound of Leo's steady progress. Some nights I sit on our porch, listen to the waves, and think about the woman I became in the darkness. The woman who dismantled 3 lives with a surgeon's precision. The revenge wasn't a satisfying explosion. It was a cold, calculated amputation to cut out the cancer destroying my life. It didn't bring me joy. It didn't bring back what I lost, but it gave my son a future. It gave us a chance. I found a different kind of justice. I became a monster to fight monsters, and I have to live with that. But when I look at my son, when I see him smile, I know without a single doubt that I would do it all again. I did what I had to do for my son. I orchestrated the complete ruin of my husband, his brother, and a corporate executive using their own secrets against them. I had to become as ruthless as they were to get justice for my child. So I have to ask you, what would you have done? Was my revenge justified, or did I become the very thing I was fighting against? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. In the end, everyone got what they deserved. Gavin Thorne is a ghost story whispered in the underworld. Marcus Thorne is a pariah, his name a permanent stain on corporate greed. And Liam lives the life of a celebrated hero, praised for a courage he never had, haunted by the son he almost lost and the wife who became his executioner. As for me and Leo, we're survivors. We're scarred and changed, but we are together and we are free. We're building a new life, one quiet day at a time, proving that sometimes the only way to find the light is to walk through the darkest parts of the night.